Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's the radioactive pop with Danny Limelight, United Wrestling Network World Heavyweight Champion. And make sure you tune into the Alliance blog every week. You heard it here first. Straight from Pop.
Welcome.
Do you know who I am?
Who the hell are you?
Who are those guys?
And then there's the other guys.
We're the other guys. We're the guys nobody ever bets on.
Just what is it that you want to do?
We want to get loaded, and we want to have a good time.
Okay, let's party.
Let me talk to you.
I'm building an alliance.
Will you join us?
It's showtime.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
If you're not here, you missing out, because this show...
Ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome. All right, listen up.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for.
Now here's the other Alliance guys, Tim, Jeremy, and Dave.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. What can we tell you? We are 2/3 of the other Alliance guys. Presentation of alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information around the United Wrestling Network, Major League Wrestling, and various independents around the world. I am joined by the Baron of Booking himself, currently fighting out of Baltimore, Maryland, but on the move soon. On the move.
Yep. Just over a month going to the Midwest, the real Midwest, Kansas City.
That's your old stomping grounds, if I recall correctly. Right back into the hotbed of pro wrestling down there, I imagine.
Oh, there's a couple organizations, and I believe Doc Draper is included with or is involved with one of them. So at least if I go see them, I'll at least see a friendly face.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be rough because you're not going to be by MLW.
Oh, I know. I'm like, oh.
Although they're going to New York and then Florida for their next two big events, right?
Yeah, they'll be in New York the end of this month, and then in March they'll be in I believe Tampa. Right.
Well, Media Mike's here. I tried to blast him out by raising the music volume up. He says Missouri's a shithole, Dave. When he lived in Lincoln County, it was 10 minutes from Harley School in Troy. We love Media Mike. He's Money Mike. Got many names. Good guy. We're waiting for Jeremy. We don't know what happened. He was here, and obviously this is Dave Scooby. I'm terrible on my intros. But Noob is here with us. Welcome, Noob. I got really scared for a second, Scoop, because I started the show up for the first time ever right before I went on the air. So it was like 0 people watching. I'm like, oh my God, we've completely tanked.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to talk to you before you went on the air, but Mike beat me to it. What's going on? What is this? What is this Scooby shave stuff? Where's the beard? What's happening?
After the show on Saturday, I met up with some friends and ended up DJing late into the night, and we sat around drinking, and they're like, what do you look like under your beard and your goatee and all that kind of stuff? And I'm like, well, so I'm like trying to hold it down and cover up my face. So for $200, they went and got a razor out of the, I guess their emergency kit that they use for medical, and they paid me $200, and I shaved my face and goatee, and it's not bad. I may keep it this way for a while. Who knows?
Yeah, it looks good, man. Yeah, Mike said you look 83 years younger.
Yay.
You listen, for $200, you don't want to know what I'd shave. So that's a good deal right there. Well, as we wait for Jeremy, and we get people back in the chat. That's good. As I said, I was getting scared for a second there. We are, you know what, Scooby, we possibly are going to be losing some viewers, and with our intention to pivot on what we're doing starting this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that the people that like us for what we do they know we talk about other type of wrestling besides the NWA.
Yeah.
And I mean, if something happens, we'll make mention of it, but they're not. I mean, we have 3 shows through the Alliance blog that are on, plus Jay does interviews. We'll be doing some interviews. Everything needs to be covered. And it's one of these things that when you go to a quote unquote normal person that's not into wrestling, if you mention pro wrestling, oh, that WWF Hulk Hogan stuff back in the day when I was a kid.
Right.
Well, there's more than the WWE. There's more than AEW. We're going to touch on a little bit of everything. And like I said, if there's something important that is dealing with the NWA, I'm sure we'll make mention of it, but we want to welcome everybody to the table.
Absolutely.
And
Well
just
said.
give you different visions of what wrestling is. And like I said, what MLW is, they are a buffet of wrestling. And there's tons and tons of different wrestling. I mean, I'm slowly but surely I'm being won over by Lucha Libre.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Things that in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm watching it. And I'm like, okay, what? He just got thrown out of the ring. Why is he popping up so soon? But then I'm like, well, they do it different in Mexico. They do it different in Japan. So you have to adapt and just with wrestling, try to not throw your mind out, but just, I guess, just believe what you're seeing and not what you're thinking. Lead with your heart.
Right.
So
it never had to be realistic to me. It just had to be plausible.
Yeah.
You know, so I could buy it. I went to an indie show in London for, they're actually big in the Toronto area, Greektown Wrestling. And there was a spot I saw early on with an atomic drop, which you don't see too much of anymore. And wow, man, it wasn't anywhere close. And I thought, what are we going to be in for here? But you just, you let it go and you look for the overall holistic picture. Like you say, you lead with your heart. I had a great time.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Jeremy says he's trying to figure out what's going on with his internet. It cut out on him when we were starting the show. James H. Jackson might be home by now. We hope so. Listen, so I got to be fair though. You're absolutely right. Giving other promotions in the Alliance family their fair share of airtime, but I'd be a liar for me if I didn't say part of the reason that we're not focusing on the NWA so directly anymore isn't just because Jay's got the pre-party or the after party, however it turns out, or the Alliance guys are NWA centric. And they, those are two guys and 3 guys really who really know their way around the NWA, but also because of, hey, listen, this is episode 83 for us. Go watch episode 82 if you want to know why I'm pissed off at the NWA. I'm actually not pissed off. I was pissed off, and now I'm just kind of like vaguely bitter about being a Canadian, not being able to watch it. I don't want to cover something I don't want to watch. And that's part of it. That's part of it as well. And we've had I know there's some people in this chat who just kind of said, I'm not going to watch it till we can all watch it.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. And everyone kind of made their decisions on their own. And I love everyone who's even remotely, part of our family and all opinions, and it's all awesome. But I do have to give the NWA credit, because today, for the first time, I did see a video about an hour ago. It's probably a couple hours now old now, from Mr. Corgan, who said, the NWA is now available on the CW app. It's as of today. I guess maybe he meant to put it up yesterday. I don't know. And for you international fans, we are working on it. Now, I know, Dave, that Joe Galley and Kyle Davis have sort of said stuff on the side before. I always took it very flippantly and not too impressed with the way it was sort of presented or all of that stuff. But this is the first time that I have seen the president and owner of the NWA say anything about to international fans anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth noting. We got to give credit. Finally, the ownership speaks up and says this is what we're doing. So, hope that's the case. But whether or not we go back to running down power, lots of great wrestling out there. I think, as you say, we'll talk about the NWA. We'll do all that stuff, but we are going to start talking about some other wrestling. Primarily, I think to start off with, for us, it's going to be United Wrestling Network and Major League Wrestling, the super fight event in which you were at this past weekend. What did you think of it overall?
I enjoyed it. It's one of these things that, like I've said before, they do tapings before and after the pay-per-view, but they make the pay-per-view, they make the matches mean something.
Right.
When you have 6 matches on a pay-per-view that's just over 2.5 hours, I mean, they give them time to breathe. And I mean, some of the matches, I mean, I was just like, okay, I see where they're going, but they're not rushing things. They're actually making the stories mean something just by little things here and there that if you followed MLW, you may know who Cesar Duran is.
Right.
If you ever watched, what was it, Lucha Underground back in the day, Caesar's MLW and Azteca Underground, there's a battle between him and Selena.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things that they're very good at storytelling. And like I had said before, with the buffet of wrestling, they have just all different flavors and types of wrestling. And that's what they build themselves as. Styles make fights. So they have, I mean, they have their lucha, they have their Japanese wrestlers. They're building up the female roster slowly but surely. It's just, it's something that's enjoyable. It's not the norm.
Yeah. And
about it.
If you were an Impact guy, they got Impact guys.
Yeah.
There's Sammy Callahan's there, and they got, if you were an NWA guy, we'll talk about Satoshi Kojima.
Oh man.
I mean, that guy's like 2-3 years older than me and can absolutely destroy me if he wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, it was just,
it
was amazing. And for everything that happened, it happened for a reason. I don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with it, but I like where they're going. You never know what's going to happen. There were so many people that just, they're like, well, what's happening? Some of the wrestlers aren't there. Cardona and several of the other wrestlers that weekend also were wrestling for Game Changer.
Right.
So it's one of those things that they have enough people on their roster that you don't have to always have the same people there. I love seeing Davey Boy Smith back. And I mean, he's part of WTF, and he's just out there, no nonsense. He's in jeans and boots. He's not in wrestling gear. He's just going out there with the Canadian flag and laying waste to whoever's in his way.
Yeah, he's always been kind of an indie favorite for me, and I know he's done big time work. It's just when I've seen him, it's always been on a bit of a smaller scale, and he's phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. We're going to run through MLW and what went down. Mike says, don't really care for Kojima, but it's good to see he got the title. It's his second time as MLW World Champion, the only guy to do that so far. It's big for them. big for the partnership. We're going to talk about that and how that went down. Right, Dave, as we mentioned, was right there as we wait for Jeremy. Jeremy had something he wanted to say right off the top about, the NWA as well, and he's not here, so we'll see if he's able to find his way. He's having trouble with his internet. We want to tell you about other stuff. We want to do other stuff, and that's going to expand as the days go on ahead. One thing I want to do is in very short blurbs and segments, I'd like to talk about some of the best written books that are out there that are beyond your WWE written nonsense. Not the least of which is going to be the Wrestleville series you see behind me. We're going to have Vinnie Berry on this show in 2 weeks. The host of Wrestleville, the author of I think there's Wrestleville 1 and 2 at least. There may be a third volume by now. Lance by Chance, the Lance Von Erich story, and also now the Black Bart biography, which we're going to chat to him about on this program. I got about 200 books. I'm going to bet you guys up front that there's probably 100 of them you've never heard of, and that I would recommend or sometimes not recommend. We're also going to talk to other people next week on this program. Next week, we're going to talk to the head booker of the United Wrestling Network, Championship Wrestling, Daniel Hill. Daniel is going to come. Yeah, he's going to come on the show and tell us all of the secrets. I haven't spoken to him yet about what it is that, maybe he can't tell us. He's not going to give us any results, but behind the scenes look, I'm always clamoring, Dave, about, where can I get more information from the UWN? I want to ask him about that. It's not out there. So it's, it is in different spaces and Twitter and Facebook, and Mr. Marquez sometimes posts, but it's not always easy to find the UWN, or Championship Wrestling is in Memphis in the YouTube page. So we'll ask him about all this stuff, and we'll ask him, what's going on with Danny Limelight, friend of the Alliance, and, what's happening with Memphis and Derby City, which is making its way back, Championship Wrestling out of California, now Ironheart Pro out of Minnesota. I can't do it. I can't do it like Jeremy can do it. He's got to get in here. So that's exciting. Big news right off the bat, though, because it happened just before we got on the show. Hey, Matthew Underwood's here and says, hello, and agreed, UWI should be more streamlined. Yeah, well, we'll talk to Daniel Hill about that next week, as I mentioned. I absolutely agree. But right before, basically, as we were put the show together and went, there we go, we're ready, Dave, for 6:35. We learned that Anthem Entertainment terminated the contract of Scott D'Amore in TNA Wrestling, and named a new president, Anthony Ciccione. Forgive me if I am mispronouncing the name. Is named the new president. He's already involved in the Anthem Entertainment product already. To my knowledge, Dave, Scott D'Amore, who I actually saw wrestle live at Border City back in the late 90s, I'm going to guess, has been involved with TNA for about 20 years or so.
Yeah.
Were you shocked to hear that he was out?
I was, and it's one of these things that whether you knew he was actually involved as a higher up, he put basically TNA's impact on his back and rebuilt it.
Right.
That it's one of these things of whether you like what they do or not, there's been a big turnaround. And I know how corporations work. I work for one.
Right.
they get rid of either people that they don't think are doing their job, and I think Scott D'Amore was doing his job. So it's one of these things of, it may be the new guy was a hire, and for what he does, they're like, well, we'll make him president over everything we do.
Right.
That it's just the wrestling, it's all this other stuff. So
yeah,
it's one of these things of, we don't know. I'll have to look up and see what this guy actually has to his name. But if it's one of these things of, oh, we have 2 presidents and 3 vice presidents and this, that they're just doubling up on people doing jobs, that they need to either mainstream, but it's one of these things that it may be a mistake, and I don't hope that it comes back to bite them, but Scott D'Amore, what he does is good for the business of wrestling.
I agree.
And I mean, he may not be, quote unquote, the next president at wherever he goes, but whoever scoops him up is getting a mind for the business. The guy knows wrestling.
What a crazy week for wrestling management, or month. You know, we're not going to touch on the Vince McMahon story, just too gross, but he's out. We'll talk about another one in a second, but you know, I know Big Chris Dog wanted to talk about it. Said, Scott, I like Scott, but maybe he couldn't get TNA over the hump. None of the free agents really considered TNA as a destination. So Matthew Underwood said Nick Nemeth was a top free agent, and he signed. And you know, and so I laughed because BKD and Matthew have often spar. I think sometimes spar anyway in a friendly way inside the Discord, and seems to have spilled out onto the floor, as they might say.
Well,
yeah,
it's one of these things of, okay, you can go after some of these free agents, but does it make sense? It's almost like I really don't follow WWE, but just being on Twitter, you know, the deal with Cody and The Rock and all this. Do you need to bring in people to fill positions when they're let go from another company? That TNA has done a very good job of building their own roster. And it's one of these things now, unless somebody is brand spanking new, you're going to bring somebody in, they're going to have either experience in AEW, TNA Impact, maybe an NWA talent, or from the WWE. That it's one of these things that before, it's not really the forbidden door, but before people worked with each other, you could go from one territory to another or one company to another, and people really had no clue until they started digging. But when you have, I mean, perfect example, Matt Cardona, he works everywhere. He chooses where he wants to work, and if he goes back to the WWE, I'm sure it'll be for a good amount of money, and he'll have some insight into what his creative is.
Right. I think
these things, talked to him a little, didn't want to bug him, but I talked to him a little, and he's enjoying doing his own thing.
Right.
So it's one of these things of, there's availability out there. You just need to pick and choose where you go.
It's true.
And with all these quote unquote indies, I mean, if you're not working every weekend or every other weekend, then you're not pushing to actually wrestle. You're choosing not to.
Right. It's funny, you know, that you mentioned that. I started following some of the talent that I spoke to after the indie event that I went to in London, Ontario, and just looking around the Canadian scene up here, like I see those guys post every day now. Like they are here, they are there, they are everywhere, and they want you to know about it. And there's just, the world is their oyster right now, and it's the same all over. But on TNA Wrestling, big shake up there. I'm reading right now from Fightful.com and Jeremy Lambert from earlier today. Anthony Ciccione named president of TNA Wrestling. And this made me think, when you hear about it, that it might have been just more of a financial decision than anything else, because Anthem Sports and Entertainment, a global multi-platform media company, announced the appointment of Anthony Ciccione as the president of TNA Wrestling. The move aims to further integrate TNA Wrestling into Anthem's entertainment group, of which Ciccione is the president. So maybe they thought, well, he can run them both. He does the whole thing right now. Put wrestling under him. Save the labor.
Yeah,
I work like for a corporation just like you, and that's bread and butter sometimes. Leveraging the entire company's resources to add more value in areas including production, distribution, marketing, viewership, customer acquisition, digital revenue streams, ad sales and sponsorships, and more. Ciccione replaces Scott D'Amore, whose contract with Anthem has been terminated. He's been part of TNA since 2003. He held many key leadership positions and played a vital role in the growth of the company, leading to its strong industry reputation today, including the successful return of the TNA Wrestling brand in 2024. Terrible decision. Yeah. Anthem thanks him for the commitment he brought to the business of talent in the ring. So Ciccione goes on to say, will manage the day-to-day business operations of TNA Wrestling. He's got 30 years of management experience, been with Anthem for 16 of those years, and produced sports content basically for all that time. So, I mean, that's it. That's all that we seem to know. I'm going to go to Matthew here. If TNA was on a bigger network than Access TV, it would be a bigger destination, as in a real competitor with AEW for a lot of talents. That being said, I should be at No Surrender on the 24th. Fantastic. Should come on the show. Do you want to come on the show? Let's get over metal on the show. James H. Jackson Jr., my buddy on Twitter. This reminds me of Sinclair and ROH.
Yep.
Definitely some similarities, aren't there? And I think James could probably expand upon that on the chat. He gave me some really good notes in Twitter today. Matthew says, personally, I think it's a mistake for networks to classify pro wrestling as non-sports and scripted. It's certainly detrimental to the product that they're on. I would agree. That's a good topic to go into at one point, but seems the New Japan did the same thing with Stardom by firing Rossi. Let's talk about that one for a second, because Chris had asked in the Discord, can we talk about that? Okay. It's crazy. Everything's going on. So okay. Sorry, something's playing here. It's a video. So a couple days ago, Stardom ended up doing a shakeup of their own when they terminated the contract of their founder and executive producer, Rossi Ogawa. They stated that he had been poaching talent during his time as executive producer. Now, I will be frank with you, I know very little about Stardom, but I do know that Julia is supposed to be headed to WWE. I do know that at least 4 other talents of big names, Kairi Sane, right? Kairi Sane. God, I'm going to have to get them off the top of my head. Wasn't Shayna Baszler? Wasn't she at Stardom at one point?
I believe so.
Chris will tell us. Chris is going to tell us in the chat. But there has been some talent lost specifically to WWE, and Mike says yes. And Rossi didn't re-sign any of the So there, it sounded like they said. Well, actually, I'll read it to you here. And this is from Fightful as well. This is Jeremy Lambert again with an update. Speaking to Tokyo Sports, Stardom president Taro Okada provided more insight into the decision. Around December, this is a quote now, we began to hear information that Mr. Ogawa was pulling people out of the company. We had always verbally told him, if you're doing that, pulling out, please stop. And we would like to continue working together in the future, but we were able to confirm that he has continued to do so since then, and we have taken this action, which was to fire him. And I really think it's interesting because he was set to resign, as I heard on the Wrestling News, the podcast, on the 18th. And they fired him, I believe, on the 5th. So basically they said, that's it. You can't do that around here. I wouldn't have fired him. I don't know.
Let him ride it out for the next 2 weeks and
at home.
A long farewell.
Yeah, this is pro wrestling. Go sit at home, and then at the end of your contract, you're off and go do your own thing. I wouldn't have let him in the building, but firing him, maybe it's different overseas. You got to pay somebody out for that. You do in this country anyway. I got to pay severance if I fire somebody.
Yep.
We're getting some talk here in the chat. Mike's gonna say something apparently. About Anthem. Okay, Matthew, is this really an everything rolls downhill situation? So many shakeups structurally so early in the year, along with the free agent market, TV deals, etc. It's crazy. It is. It's nuts. Mike says I'm very fucking annoyed with Anthem. D'Amore was a class act. This was a fucking dumb thing to do. That to pay this drives me huge. D'Amore got us in to make gear. Oh, I see. There was a business thing going on there. Mike is involved with some gear making stuff. Mike, put some links in the chat if you want for that stuff, eh? And I'd be happy to to promote some of that stuff. Doty's here, our friend Doty, late to the party. So you want to throw the NWA bell? See me change the name to Dog Gold. Yeah, if you know, you know. No, I'm not going to throw the Reggie Parks made. I'm name dropping, but that's a belt, man. I'm not going to throw that in the trash, a la the one wrestler who I will never forgive, whose name shall not be spoken, Scoob.
Yep.
Yeah, all this front office news, but this guy appears to have been poaching Dave, not only the talent, but also from their front office. It's and he ended up going on to say, the truth might be known someday, or however he worded it. But from now on,
crazy.
Yeah, Stardom's not my Stardom; it's Bushiroad Stardom. It's crazy. Julia is apparently leaving. She's going to WWE. I read later this afternoon. She's probably, I would imagine, one of their biggest names over there. And she is going to actually postpone her time in going to WWE, according to WrestleZone anyway, and in order to help Rossi start a new promotion.
Wow.
I don't know. Pro wrestling more real than fake, as they say. I don't get the NWA. You know this, Tony. I don't get this joke. I've been reading this joke from you for a while now. I don't get it. Was Billy in a Volvo commercial? What's the deal here? Was there a Volvo commercial playing during CW stuff?
Don't know.
The Canada Alberta thing, yeah. There was some kind of commercial for come to Alberta during their show, just to dig a knife into my ribs for the NWA on the CW. Yeah, Mike appears to have had a deal with D'Amore, and this is for Pro Wrestling Wear, and it looks like, just follow up in the chat there. And Looks like it might have caused our man Money Mike some gas here. They fired Rossi before he could announce his own promotion. I think that's a good move. What about you, Dave?
Well, I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I guess they just did a preventative measure, so he didn't take any more of their wrestling or any more of the roster. But it's one of those things that unless you're a wrestler that has a ironclad contract, you're an independent contractor. I'm not sure how it works overseas, how they have it there, but it's one of these things that until the big money came, you were only guaranteed a certain amount.
Yeah.
And then they went from there. So, I mean, once the WCW did the big money deals, it changed things. I'm not sure how they do it in Japan or down in Mexico or however, but it's one of these things that if you're a wrestler, just watch out for yourself.
Right. This is Rossi here. Carry on. Yep.
It's one of these things that if he's starting a new promotion, that's fine. The more places there are to wrestle, the better for the wrestlers. But we'll never know the whole story with all the things that are happening. Same thing with Vince. You may know some, but you'll never know everything.
Yeah, I know too much already. We all do.
And I mean, it's just
it's terrible. I mean, but Anthem sounded like a financial decision the way they cut out that layer of management that D'Amore happened to be sitting in to bring in one guy to do everything. But I mean, the Vince thing I didn't think was handled well. We don't have to get into that, but you know, they're like, oh, I don't want Triple H saying I don't want to focus on the positive, or he doesn't work here anymore, right? So
yeah.
So you don't want to have a statement, okay? Have you heard Noob? Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was just going to say, when they have one or two people over a company, I mean, you know as well as I do, when you do a corporate thing, the higher ups, they pick and choose what they do. That they might not have a hand in everything, but they want to have a say in everything.
Right.
And I mean, just like one of our presidents for the company I work for, there's certain songs he doesn't like. So when he goes to open up a new place and do the ribbon cutting, we let that DJ / entertainer know that, hey, the big boss man is going to be there. Do not play such and such song. If you want your job, make sure you do not play this song. For some reason, there's certain songs that they're popular, but he just doesn't like them. Right. So it's these things of, they're not always, the higher ups aren't always involved with everything underneath them, but they do have a final say. So you just have to basically respect it, go by what they say, and when they're not around, just step lightly.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. And it's unfortunate. I mean, it's the same everywhere, but sometimes you got to walk around like you're on eggshells.
Yeah.
Noob & Co. TV, our friend Noob. You heard that Camille is possibly getting signed to AEW? I didn't, but I did see her on Twitter saying real soon, you know, I miss the fans and I'm coming back. Have you heard anything, Scooby?
Not official, but I do believe she was at a recent Dynamite. I'm not sure which one because I really don't watch AEW as well. But I mean, I'm for her going wherever she can make the most money.
Right.
And I miss seeing her wrestle. She would be a good addition in AEW, but they need to figure out there's only so many people that you can sign. It's just like you can have 10 of the best basketball players, but you can only play 5 at a time. So you have to pick your 5 best. You can have all these wrestlers, and it's great to build up and have some homegrowns, but you need to take your most successful and your most well-known wrestlers and put them towards the front of the crowd. Just like NWA, they're now on the CW app. I don't think we'll be seeing Gags the Gimp anywhere soon on NWA programming. Nothing against Gags the Gimp. Some people like them, some people don't. But they're now on a more mainstream for people to watch. Granted, it's an app, but it's available for quite a few people to get their eyes on for free. And you want to put your best foot forward and put your most well-known wrestlers or your bigger names that people may recognize from other wrestling organizations. You got to put them forward.
Right.
And one of these things that all these different companies, it's great if you have all these wrestlers, but if you're not using them, you're losing them.
Right. And
So,
it's also for the wrestler side, you've got to decide to some degree your own fate. And, Camille's going to go, and I'm sure she's total pro, going to be aware of this. Obviously that, she's not going to come in and dominate like she did in the end. That's unlikely, wherever she ends up going. But, it's a matter of, are you going to be a big fish in a small pond forever, or are you going to get into a larger pond? And as Mike ended up saying here in the chat a second ago, right now for myself, for Camille, I would wish her to go to WWE, NXT first, and then above. Stay safe, wrestle safer, make more money. And I think that's bang on. AEW doesn't have that. I mean, AEW doesn't use FTR, so, but wherever you can get a paycheck, right?
well, I mean, there's a perfect storyline that you could insert her in immediately.
Right.
You could take her to WWE, and Nick Aldis is having problems with everybody coming at him. This is my insurance policy. If you want to deal with me, you deal with me the correct way.
Right.
So bring Camille in. She's the insurance policy / bodyguard. Another way to bring in, who is it? Jade Cargill. She was in Royal Rumble. She made a couple, I guess, a couple moves towards getting on TV on a regular basis, but she still has to learn the WWE way. Well, what happens if Adam Pearce needs a insurance policy?
Right.
It'd get these people on TV while they're still learning.
James H. Jackson says, probably from what he hears, our best wishes that might happen are unlikely. PW's Insider Elite says their sources heard she's signing in AEW. I think he means, and WWE is definitely out. Mike Johnson doesn't do the rumor stuff, tend to think this is true. He said she's choosing their AEW for the lighter schedule, and she's working on a few acting gigs. Fantastic.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm the reason my wife watched NWA was because of Camille. The fact that she was accessible to not only my wife, but to the alliance over this NWA, going to the CW and us international fans not being able to watch it. The fact that she spoke up and said, y'all need to band together to make something happen, it means something.
Yeah.
And she's I'm always gonna have a soft spot for Camille. I will always, I think, follow her career and wish her well. Noob said, I do want to see Natalia Markova get signed somewhere, even though she didn't get signed a contract and her booking is very awkward. I see Natalia going to a place like Impact.
Yeah.
I think that's, or an MLW. That's a step up, I think, for her. I do think that if she doesn't, she's still an absolute candidate for the Burke. She should have it.
Yeah.
To make that step up, I don't know why she's not. I mean, maybe she. I shouldn't say maybe she is because I do know she isn't, but she would have been a great women's television champion to get that extra bump up. But I also think, I'm crazy. Maybe I'm out of the loop that when Jordan Grace comes to the Women's Rumble, Scoob, and she shows up wearing the Impact title, and I think Mickie James did that too.
Yep.
This is a TKO decision, right?
Yeah.
You might not be too far away, especially with front office changes. If D'Amour's out and you've got their talent appearing on the WWE, I am speculating. I clearly know nothing, but is there a purchase in the future? I wonder. What do you think? Who knows, right? I don't know, Tim, for God's sake.
I mean,
yeah.
Anthem has TNA, but they also have Access. And I've seen and heard people mention that Anthem is possibly doing what Sinclair did to ROH. That they're basically using them to show on TV, which only about 60% of the United States are able to get access on cable.
Right.
So it's one of those things that I watch usually on Fridays, but I'll watch it and it's on YouTube and I pay like a 99 cents a month.
Right.
And I don't mind paying that because it's not too much out of pocket. But who knows what's happening. I mean, I saw something about like all these different networks, Warner Brothers, Discovery, and all this, that they're possibly getting together to do a master sports network. That it would have all these different sporting events on it. And I mean, if you can work with others and it makes you more successful, do it.
Right. Agreed. We'll let dog bark herself out there. Scoop's talking about Markova, and I know that you are the number one fan for Natalia Markova. Why wouldn't you be? She's a great talent. She gave us the Scoob and I at ringside there the match of the night from night one at NWA 75.
Yep.
Everybody remembers Camille spearing her through that table, but let's remember who got speared through that table. Like, that takes two to tango.
Yeah.
She was great, and then she was good to go the next night, right?
Yep.
Great talent. So I say this with that in mind and respectful to how much that you are a big Natalia Markova fan. She's, I believe, 35. And the WWE, I know it's not the traditional WWE anymore, it's TKO. But some of that, of where WWE has put their energies over the last 5 or 10 years, is young. And 35 in this business with, 10 to, say, 15 years of experience is amazing at a place, potentially like AEW, certainly at Impact, MLW, NWA, UWN, all of those places, there's a spot for her to do that. 35, I think, is too old for WWE. Maddie Rankowski's 27, 28. Rang Sinclair, and she just signed. And I thought, that's almost old for them. Like, look at the ages for when some of these ladies sign. And so, they're not interested in, is the way I've always looked at it, WWE, in bringing in talent and letting them on the show. They were interested in bringing in a raw talent that they could mold into a WWE talent.
Yeah.
And teach them not how to wrestle, but how to wrestle the WWE way. I think at 35, I would be very surprised to see her go there. I wouldn't be so surprised at AEW or any of the other places. And Matthew Underwood here said, but Deeb, Thunder Rosa, Camille, and AEW, though, ooh, I look at that ladies division over there and think, should I be watching AEW? Like, they've got some serious talent on that side of the defense. But there you go. Hey, really quick, everybody. Neither here nor there to anything. But happy 70th birthday to the coach, Rip Rogers. Rip Rogers was a longtime trainer for OVW, considered to be like the trainer for the entire length he's been doing this. He wrestled all the way back to the 70s. There is a book not written. I'll take that down for a second. Not written by him, but by one of his students, Caleb Hall. You can get it on Amazon. We'll talk about books in a bit, but called The Book on Pro Wrestling: Lessons from Rip Rogers. And it is literally just as if he were regurgitating it from Rip Rogers' mouth to pro wrestlers themselves. Cool book. It's a fun book. I would imagine more so if you're a pro wrestler, but this guy, he wrestled all the way back to, I want to say around 75. He was Pacific Northwest for me. When I was a kid, it was, he was him and Buddy Rose, and I love Playboy Buddy Rose. I don't know why, I just thought he was cool. and Rip Rogers, and he did the Hollywood Blondes with Ted Oates and JCP, and he was there. I read this today. I didn't know this. When WCW broke away, he was in WCW and was like the Jobber King. I only remember him as that past the Portland stuff, but he had a bunch of NWA titles in his career. He was the OVW heavyweight champion 3 times. NWA Southeast US Junior, World Wrestling Council, WWC Caribbean champion twice, National Tag Champion, the NWA, Central States Television champ. Just the coach that you'd want is really what I think everybody says, right? So, love Uncle Rip, says Mike. So happy 70th birthday to Rip Rogers. Big influence. We don't know what happened to Jeremy. He's something went up with his internet, but hopefully he'll. It's an excellent book on wrestling, learning in life. Yeah, once again, the book on pro wrestling. Look it up on Amazon. It was real cheap. I got it a couple of years ago. If it's still available, especially if you're an aspiring, pro wrestler yourself, and I can kind of imagine someone just more reading it, while they're between gym sessions or something. What would Rip have to say about anything? Let's talk. We talked about some of the news. We talked about how Daniel Hill, the UWN head booker, coming on. Jeremy hopefully gets on. We can talk about UWN, or I'll skim through it if he doesn't. But let us talk, Scoob, about Major League Wrestling.
We are MLW. The ultimate stage where fighting styles compete for greatness and gold. Where styles make fights. This is Major League Wrestling.
I bet that was loud enough that it scared the hell out of Mike. That's what I'm going for every time I play music loud. Dave, this past weekend, I want to say Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday night, yep.
Saturday night, MLW presented Super Fight live on Triller, but even more fun than live on Triller, you had Dave Scooby sitting there giving us great photos from right near the stage.
Yep.
As guys were coming in, follow Dave on Twitter, guys. You'll see some of those photos as they come out. There was, I looked at the card later. I thought, oh, there's only 6 matches, and then I remember you were saying like they do TV tapings after these things, right? So overall, I know you kind of mentioned at the top you thought it was a lot of fun. How long did the whole thing last?
Doors open at 5:30 for VIP, then 6 o'clock for GA. The wrestlers are out there. They're selling merch, signing autographs. Got a Jacob Fatu shirt. Got a picture taken with him.
Yeah,
really good guy.
I'll get off. No, we can't do it. Anyway, I'll put it in the overlay. Yeah, great picture with Scooby and Fatu. Yeah,
but it starts. They start their taping at 7 and go for about 55 minutes. Then they start the pay-per-view at 8 o'clock, and it goes to maybe 10:15, 10:30, depending on how long the matches are. But it's one of these things that they'll do 3 or 4 matches in the hour before, and then maybe 2 to 3 matches after. Now, this one, they did several matches before, and it was one of these things that on either Fusion, which they put on YouTube, or BN Sports, or like they did, I believe it was the end of last month, that they'll do a special and they'll throw it on YouTube. Well, what they do is, I believe a week from this Saturday, that they're going to have another MLW special, and it'll be storyline driven of what, and they'll go back and look at what happened at Super Fight, and the matches that they taped before and after deal with what either happened in the previous tapings or at this pay-per-view.
Right.
Or it's one of these things that they're going to show it on YouTube, I believe, coming up, what is it, the 17th, I believe, which is Saturday. I'm not sure.
Right.
17th or 18th. But it's one of these things that when they do this, they're able to focus on their pay-per-view Super Fight, which has been going on for, I think, 3 or 4 years in MLW. But MLW is also, they do a very good job of mixing up the styles.
Right.
And like I had said, not all the wrestlers were available for this, which I think is good, because you can push certain wrestlers and you don't have to overcrowd the card itself.
That's one thing I noticed jumping on board only this past year as an MLW fan, was that, you'll probably see the world heavyweight title get defended, every special event once a month. That seems to be the case. But like other months, it's going to be Rocky Romero, the middleweight title. Then we're going to go to, I don't know, like the tag titles for.
Well, like you said, the tag titles.
Yeah.
They were on the pay-per-view, but they weren't wrestling as a tag team. They were going up against members of WTF, and they're building towards an actual match coming up down the line where they'll have to put up the titles.
Right.
Losing matches by interference.
Right.
So it's one of these things of they're slowly building a story and they're not rushing it, which, like I said before, they're liking. I'm liking the storyline where it's actually spread out.
This one started with actually, I'm going to ask you when you're later on, but about if Richard Holiday ended up being in action, but there was tapings afterwards. This one started with a 2 out of 3 falls World Middleweight Championship match between Rick Del Santo's son's favorite wrestler, Ichiban, and the champ himself, Rocky Romero. I got lots of time in the world for Rocky Romero as a talent.
Oh, yeah.
So good. 2 out of 3 falls. You're there at ringside. If we're recapping, you've got Romero with Selena De La Renta, and I forget the other guy's name. Rodriguez?
Ricardo Rodriguez. He used to be with Alberto Del Rio.
Right. I know the first pinfall is tainted. It goes to Rocky.
Yep.
As they hold on to Ichiban's foot. The second goes to Ichiban, who catches him with his leaping flatliner.
Yep.
For the 3 count. And then the third, it seemed to go pretty like back and forth, some really hard hitting. When I was watching the highlights, I thought, like, I wish I had been, with you ringside for this one. But he ended up getting the third fall clean, Scoob, Rocky Romero with Sunset Driver.
Yeah. And I mean, it was just, it's high pace, but it's one of these things that, like you said, it was 2 out of 3, and Rocky Romero won that third and final. He got him with that pin, but there wasn't interference. That took place in the first fall. So it's one of those things that if you know or have ever seen Rocky Romero, he can wrestle, but he's not afraid to take the easy way out. And he got the advantage, and it's good storytelling that Ichiban, the crowd just eats him up. They love him. He'll get up, he'll get up on in a corner and just start pounding. And usually when you're hitting your opponent, they're counting 1, 2, 3. Well, everybody just chants 1 every time he hits him. And I mean, just it's amazing. You can just feel the energy in the crowd. And it's one of these things that I got a couple pictures and sent them to Rick. Ichiban, they're telling the story the correct way. He's the underdog. He's always outnumbered. There's other wrestlers and other Lucha Libre stars, and with Cesar back with the Azteca Underground, they're building a very good story. So it's Cesar Duran was the bad guy. Now he's being cheered because he was with Mystico, who is the old Sin Cara.
Right.
So it's going to be a battle between Selena and her group and Cesar and his group, that they're building up these groups of luchadors. So down the line, I see that Ichiban will have some backup, but they're taking the story slowly. And that's the one thing I hate to say it, but most other companies rush things way too fast.
Right. And this,
and they're letting it simmer. They're
right.
putting it on boil. They're boiling the water, getting it everything warmed up. Then they knock it down and just let it simmer.
And for Colt Bauer and his team to hearken it all back to Lucha Azteca, right? To Azteca Underground, that like, and he's got, you can tell with the fans when they bring Cesar out, like it's like, oh my God, like the whole what's her name, Selena
De La Renta, yeah.
Yeah, like the whole. Do you remember she borrowed money thing, from a backer like way back long ago, and like it's almost now like he's here to collect the vig, so to speak, right? Ichiban, number one, the number one source for
Ichiban Alliance, yes,
that's right. And so we'll move on because man, what's like, hey, what are you just going to put in the middle of your card? Like what's just going to be the filler while everyone goes to the bathroom and it's not this match because it's Davey Boy Smith Jr. of WTF with Mr. St. Laurent in the Haas fight to end all Haas fights in MLW, the one called Manders. Just what's the phrase? Two big boys slapping meaty boys.
Two meaty men slapping meat. Yep.
What? Well, I mean, this one. Do I have it here? I mean, I don't know. Walk us through it, man. You're there. You're going to be better than anything that was written on down.
Well, it's one of these things that it may not be a Haas fight where they're big 6'5" guys and all this, but they're both over 6 foot. They're both just wrestlers, and they'll do whatever it takes to win. And when they said Haas fight, it was never really explained if it was just because of their size, but it was basically a no DQ, and they just went, and both these guys just gave it their all. Davey Boy Smith ends up giving Manders a crossface, and Manders ends up passing out. So he didn't submit. He passed out, and they're building the story of WTF, who St. Laurent runs, and that's the World Titan Federation. It's his own little wrestling organization within MLW. Now they're building up the tag teams from the WTF, and down the line they'll probably have Davey Boy Smith go after the tag belts.
Right.
It's either him or Filthy Tom Lawler, or Cardona's part of the group, Josh Bishop. They have 5 or 6 different people that are involved, but not all of them were there. And it's one of these I was looking for a possible run-in, but it was good storytelling that they're building to that tag match down the line.
Yeah. And I think it's awesome that they didn't. Manders comes out looking strong because he passes out, a la Austin and the Sharpshooter in a way, right? Way back in the day. He's too tough to submit, but he gets beat. And, Davey Boy doesn't need anybody to run in. A bunch of people showed up. Jammin's here. What's up? Jammin, it was his birthday last week. We all wished him well on Twitter. He's a good man. Go check him out on Twitter. My buddy Lou. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and refugees. We are tonight's entertainment. Good to see you, Lou. Matthew says DBS needs to be the guy in MLW. What do you think, Dave?
I could see him going after the belt down the line. We'll get to the championship. It's one of these things that Davey Boy Smith can fit in anywhere that MLW chooses to put him. That now they're building up newer stars but they're also having people that have had experience in the big time in WWE with this WTF group. Cardona's there, but Cardona wasn't there this weekend. He was elsewhere with a Game Changer. So this go around, Davey Boy Smith, he's back. He's healthy again. He got the rub that it's a push towards WTF getting the tag belts. And like I said, it's a push, but it's a slow enough push that you know where they're going. It's something you can anticipate.
Right.
You look forward to. It's almost like the night before Christmas and you're like, man, I can't go to sleep. I'm nervous. I can't wait. You're a little kid waiting for your Christmas present, or it's your birthday. You're waiting for that, for the final gift that they're going to give you, and it's going to come head to head with the Second Gear Crew and WTF, and it's just going to be a battle for the belts, and I'm looking so forward to it.
You are here for it. Yeah, it's so good. So I mean, and the gifts just keep on coming, because you open the show as MLW with Romero versus Ichiban. So Lucha, 2 out of 3 falls for a world middleweight title. They tear the house down, and then they give you Davey Boy Smith versus the one called Manders. So now you're holding your pee if you didn't go earlier, because right now you get Yuji Nagata taking on the Samoan Werewolf, Jacob Fatu, in a where did it go here? In a match that Fatu ended up getting recently, Dave, choked out by Riddle, right?
Yep.
By Matt Riddle. But now we got Nagata. How did it go down?
Well, it's one of these things that they're using the wrestlers' strengths to build others. And while if you don't know, Fatu is finishing up with MLW and is moving on, but he's been so strong in wrestling all these different styles of wrestlers.
Right.
So it's one of these things that whether he wins or loses, it really doesn't hurt him, but it helps the others that he's working with.
Right.
And I mean, Nagata is, I believe, like 53 or 54 or something like that. But he's Blue Thunder. He is well known in Japan. And I mean, it's one of these things that I'm enjoying it because I'm seeing a different style of wrestling. That right. If you didn't watch a lot of old WCW, where they brought in some of the Japanese cruiserweights, you're not really seeing a lot of proper Japanese wrestlers. That WWE, the way they've sanitized the wrestlers,
right,
when they join them. But this is one of those things that, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, all throughout the match, I mean, it was back and forth, and I mean, they're just hitting and slapping each other, and the crowd is just in the palm of their hands. But I mean, Fatu has an alius. He ends up doing a double spring moonsault from the top rope. Ends up getting a 3 count in his farewell match.
That's nice.
And this was done the correct way. Usually, if you're leaving, you put other people over. But Nagata is there for who knows how long.
Right.
He may be there for the next 1 or 2. I think he has a 90-day visa, so he's there for the next 1 or 2 pay-per-views, tapings. But this loss doesn't hurt him. The crowd goes away happy, and it tells the story because Nagata is just that. I mean, he's amazing at what he does. So
it really is. And like, I find Jacob Fatu to be the most compelling, I'm going to say non-mainstream, I'm meaning not WWE, not AEW talent that I've ever seen in the way he freaks me out, Dave, because he's so big and,
Oh yeah.
Samoan Werewolf, and he's thick, and he's muscular, and he moves like a goddamn cat.
And I mean the flips and moves, and I mean, if you would ask somebody to describe Jacob Fatu, what's his wrestling style? Everything. He does what cruiserweights do. He does what heavyweights do. He can wrestle, moonsaults, high flyer, anything and everything. I mean, he's been trained by some of the best, and he comes from the Samoan bloodline.
Right.
So it's one of those things that, I mean, it's one of the, there's not many of those wrestlers that have failed. They may not all be superstars, and they may not be The Rock and Roman Reigns, but they've had their place, and they've had their place going back to the 70s.
Right.
So it's one of those things that after the match, the crowd is just eating it up. Fatu grabs a mic, starts to thank the crowd, and Contra shows up. Now, Contra, back in the day, Fatu was part of Contra. Well, one of his old running mates shows up. Mads Krugger is back, comes in the ring with all these masked men, and he lays Fatu out. This sets up a taping of a match, and that's the farewell match for Fatu. But Mads Krugger, if you watch any of Memphis wrestling, you may know him as Cruel.
The Atrocity Cruel.
But I mean, this guy's what, 6'7", 6'8", huge. Logan, masked wrestler. He was written off, I'd say 6-8 months ago. And Court just knows when to pull the trigger on certain things. Okay, this needs cooling off. Take a back seat. We're going to put you on the back burner. Then bring them back around. So it's one of those things that it's a good storyline. And if you know the history, you can connect the dots.
Right. If he rings any bells, there he is. Mads Krugger, or Cruel, as he is on Instagram, and also Memphis Wrestling right now, where he's kind of the center of attention currently. Jamin says Cruel's wrestled in Georgia, not wasted in Georgia. Jamin's put some stuff up, by the way. Georgia Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling making its return. Matt Cardona, Ricky Starks, Cody's sister, QT Marshall, and others are going to be there. And the venue is in the Nightmare Factory Gym. In McDonough. That's great. I almost think it's worth keeping up on like an indie list every week, Dave. Just, there's stuff around you want to share with the Alliance family. We'll just get it out there all the time.
Yeah.
Wrestled as Logan Creed. I think Dave mentioned that too, right?
Yep.
Media says, no. Joe, his name shall never be spoken in these halls.
No, Joe. Yeah, he was not there. And I mean, when I heard the Contra music, and I'm like, oh, please no. And I'm like looking, and I'm like, okay.
My understanding is that the Almighty Sheik still has the NWA World Championship that he was given. That's my understanding. So it's more of a, from the belt guy point of view, it's more than just didn't do business and that was the end of it. Kept, property that doesn't belong to him as well. But he was in MLW. He was in Contra. Dusty Rose Jamin says turnbuckle wrestling after WCW. Yes, he did. Absolutely. Let's finish up this card, which doesn't slow down. Now, look, this is Akira at a Death Machine Rules match against Sami Callihan. I like Sally. I like Sami Callihan. I think he's. I like his presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I loved in this, you'll go and watch hardcore matches, and you'll see guys hit each other with golden chairs. There's chairs, there's tables, there's thumbtacks, stop signs, cookie sheets, yawn. It's fine. It's boring now. In this one, to take the 8x10 glossy of Akira, right, to Akira, and give him paper cuts.
Paper cuts, yep.
Between all of his fingers and on the sides of his mouth, and then instead of a chair or table, get a lemon.
Yeah, squeeze it. I'm like,
squeeze it all in there. That's incredible. I love it. Anyway, tell us about it.
I mean, this was a anything goes death machine rules match. It was just crazy. It was all over. Akira, if you don't know, was part of the Calling. And the Calling is a group that has Raven as the head. He's the master of the Calling. And in the Calling, you now have Sami Callihan, you have Ricky Shane Page. It's hardcore. It's hardcore wrestling. The Calling, when they come out, they always come out and they roll out a medical tray with all these different devices on them and instruments that they can take into a match. But it's one of these things that Akira he's not like Stone Cold as a wrestler, but he's like Stone Cold as he's not a baby face, but the people love him. It's because he made the turn and left the Calling, and the only way that they can actually get wins over Akira is to have the Calling run interference.
Right.
So this is a anything goes. So with that, the Calling ends up beating down Akira. Sami Callihan, with the help of the Calling, defeated Akira in this match. But it's storytelling. They're building and building and building until he gets the win. I mean, they had him, they took duct tape and taped him to the ropes. So he's there, he's getting beat the hell down. Raven ends up showing up. Now, Raven is sometimes there, but he's not always there. So he ends up showing up, and he comes out, and everybody's glad to see Raven. Everybody in the Calling, he gets in there, and of course, Raven picks up a kendo stick and then proceeds to beat the hell out of the Calling and sides with Akira. So you have Raven, not so much as a babyface, but he's the savior for Akira. So there's a couple pictures of them doing their arms out up on the ramp, and it's just it's amazing. It keeps building the story that you have somebody from one group get kicked out, then the leader of that said group comes down and turns on his own group. So it's Korg is doing a good job of storytelling. And as much as I'd like to say, hurry up, get to the good part, I like how slow they're taking it.
Right.
That most wrestling has spoiled people in they want instant gratification, 5 minutes. I have a short attention span. I want it now. Korg used to work for the WWE back in the day. He knows how to do storytelling. He worked with, I think, Vince Russo some, and also Brian Gortz. So he knows what's going on in storytelling, but he's just stretching it out. He's doing a taffy pull where he's taking it and just stretching it out and making it last. So when you finally get it, there's your reward.
Was it?
It was crazy to have that happen and hear people cheering Raven in the old ECW arena.
Right. Was it presented? I just threw a picture up. Yeah, he was in the NWA for like a week.
Yeah.
Although he did book with Billy back in Revolution Pro, I believe. So there was a relationship there. Here's a picture from the weekend. Did it? Was it presented like, they did everything that they had to, the calling to beat Akira, and they beat Akira, and Raven just went, there's too much spirit in this guy. I'm siding with him now. Like,
I really don't know. I'm hoping that there's more explanation down the line, but it's one of those things that it's good storytelling, whether they explain what happens or not.
Right.
But it's the building.
Right.
You could feel the energy when he came out, because if you're a fan of ECW, you know who Raven is, and you know Raven's story with Sandman and Raven's story with Tommy Dreamer. You just get a feeling. He's come back and he's actually helping build other wrestlers, which is he did to a point in ECW, but now he doesn't have to wrestle. He can just be the voice. And if he gets one or two other people to help him, MLW does what WWF and WWE did back in the day when they had like the Los Boricuas, they had what was it, the chain gang guys and all this. They're doing good with groups of 3 and 4, maybe up to 5 people. They're doing group warfare, and it tells stories whether everybody's involved or not.
Right.
So it's one of these things that we'll see where it goes. But I mean, I hope there is an explanation as to why he turned on the calling.
I'm sure there will be. Like you say, MLW kind of does things right. So we move on to this match: Mystico versus Averno, who has Selena De La Renta in his corner. Tell us about this. How did this one go down?
Well, I mean, this is a great example of lucha. They were flying all around that ring, and it's not like both these guys were small. Mystico, the old Sin Cara, is the smaller of the two, but Averno, he had some size to him, but just like what Jacob Fatu does, the moves these guys do in the ring, you don't have to be 5'8" and 150 pounds if you learn the style. You learn where your breaking point is as to what you can and cannot do. But this was just a very good, quick match. But Cesar was there. He returned, and he sided with Mystico. And Mystico ended up defeating Averno. And this was the debut for both of these guys.
Right.
It's one of these things that at the tapings after, Cesar is bringing in other luchadors from Mexico, from CMLL. So it's one of these things that they're building up another group with Cesar that he's going to do battle with Selena. So it's one of these things that it's just, I like where they're going. that it's not always just about one wrestler. It's about a group of wrestlers, and anybody who is included in those groups, there's multiple people that they can do battle with.
Right.
That they may be wrestling and all of a sudden WTF, one of the members of WTF comes out and tries to get involved in a wrestling match and just gets knocked out by another member of an opposing group. That it's battle warfare amongst groups, and I like what they're doing. And with Mystico doing this, they're building up. Like I said, Cesar has his luchadors, and it's just going to be a battle. It's a battle of styles and a battle of groups, which I'm liking.
It's I lost everything. It's definitely look. I look forward more and more every week to tuning in, and in this particular card, nothing interested me more through all of these great matches than the main event that's up next. It is Alex Kane, world heavyweight. I'm still stuck in the NWA. World heavyweight champion, defending his title, the Suplex Assassin. Bomai is for the people. Against Satoshi Kojima. And I looked at this and I thought, oh, Kojima, it's been years since he was NWA champion, and I figured this is kind of like a Willie Mack situation, right? Where it was kind of going to be it'll be a good fight. Everyone will have a good time and go home. And Alex Kane will retain the championship. Mm-hmm. Tell us what happened, Scoob.
Well, it was a very back and forth match. I mean, both of these guys know what's going on. And I mean, Kojima, I mean, he was one of the first, if not the first, MLW world champion. So I'm thinking what you're thinking. Okay, they have New Japan guys, they have CMLL guys. They're bringing them in. They're working, and they're putting some names. And you have a former MLW champion and NWA champion. Let's throw them against the current champion, and basically build up Alex Kane. Well, this was a complete twist, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? Kojima ends up pinning Alex Kane. And Kane's held it for, I think 6 months, maybe 7. And he's doing good. He's defended it throughout, outside the MLW and at every MLW pay-per-view. But it's one of these things that it was just, to me, it was a shocker. I'm not sure where they're going, but there's storyline. Here's a former champion coming back and winning this championship. And after this match, there were several other Japanese wrestlers that came out, and they're drinking beer in the ring, and they're chanting beer and bread.
Yeah, let us all eat bread again.
Let's eat bread. And I mean, and it's just, I mean, to me, it was crazy. Kojima, I got a couple pictures of him, but he ends up getting the mic, thanking the crowd. He tells them, drink more beer, eat bread, and that was the end of it. It was just, to me, it was just...
absolute shocker.
It was a shock. It was just a twist. It's like, okay, let's take this and flip it on its head.
Right.
So it's like, you know that Alex Kane has a rematch down the line, but what's going to happen?
Satoshi is officially the second NWO World Heavyweight Champion. Shane Douglas is listed on Wikipedia as being stripped of it because he sucks. Well, I mean, it doesn't say that. I just don't like Shane Douglas. But yeah, he beat Jerry Lynn for it for the title in 2002.
Damn.
And a title that, by the way, has since been held since then. If I can if I can just kind of try to reel everybody who's not already watching more and more into MLW, what they've been all about. After Kojima, Mike Awesome.
Oh, wow.
Steve Carino. Who else? Shane Strickland, Low Key, Tom Lawler in 2019. That's upon the return years later, right? Then Jacob Fatu, Alexander Hammerstone, and obviously Alex Kane ended that, I don't know, 700-day career or whatever it was, or reign rather, of Alexander Hammerstone. So that's awesome. Shocker. I love that they did that, and I wonder why. Is Kane, was he hurt? Is something up?
Yeah, I don't know. Usually he comes out after the matches and sells his swag. He was not there.
Right.
He was hanging back with Mr. Thomas and a couple of the others, but it's one of these things that MLW is just, when you think they're going to zig, they zag.
Yeah. I love it.
I have no idea what Court has in store, but I'm looking forward to it.
What would Luthez do? The ingredients and process of making the Kojima title change sausage would be fascinating to hear, wouldn't it?
Yep.
The stuff I'd live for. The older I get, the more, businessy and just obscure stuff that I really want to know more about, rather than speculating on, no offense to Cody, is it Cody? Is it Rock?
Yeah.
I don't really care so much about that as I do, how did we get here?
Yeah.
I agree with that. That's amazing. I know you gave it in when I asked you about an 8.5 or something like that out of 10. It's pretty good.
I mean, it's one of these things that I try to get pictures as they're coming in and down the entryway. If I can get I'm maybe, I'd say 25 feet back from the ring, so I can zoom in and get some pictures. But I've been, if I can, trying to put my phone away and just watch.
Right.
Because as much as it is, you're watching live and you're going to take a picture and you're trying to zoom in, I've got my pictures of the wrestlers coming in and leaving. I'm trying to enjoy what they do, and then I'll rewatch it when I get home.
I'm with you, man. At 75, I tried to get them in and out of the ring, and then I knew, like with Camille, this is going to be. I like one shot in the ring of the action, then put the phone away.
Yeah.
I want to just enjoy it. It's it's funny how it goes. Bounty Keith, the bounty hunter. welcome. Same here. Same. Hate the product, love the process. Yeah, exactly. That's well said. So that's I'm looking forward now to from MLW to Intimidation Games, and after this particular show, we learned a couple things. I'll admit I do not know this particular talent, Unagi Sayaka, other than to say that she is a Joshi, a TJPW talent, and I want to say Stardom talent. But that's for 2 months from now. That's War Chamber in March.
Yeah.
But next month, I freaked out, and our good friend Lamb said, "Language server," because I dropped a serious F-bomb. Bobby Fish, baby, returns at MLW Intimidation Games. I'm all about Bobby Fish. I'm excited. How about you?
I do like what he does. He just needs to find a place that uses his talent.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hate to say losing ROH, there were a lot of wrestlers that lost a place that they could be themselves.
Right.
So it's one of these that they're having to step in and do these other things. And I'm all for everybody working, but I mean, Bobby Fish is a talent that should be everywhere.
Right.
And I'm glad that MLW, they're doing monthly pay-per-views and monthly tapings. So they're rotating talent as needed. And I would personally like to see some of the other talent, whether it be NWA talent, Impact, TNA talent, they're doing it somewhat of the correct way. They're doing their monthly tapings or a monthly event that they record and then show back. But everybody seems to be heading to Florida in the winter and early spring. But this is one of those things that I'm excited to always see somebody new.
Right.
MLW knows what's going on, and it's one of these things that they had a few newer wrestlers come out, but having like Raven show up to actually take place or be a part of the story of his group, which the Calling, they've been around for the last, I think, 8 to 10 months, but he wasn't always there. I'm going to be interested to see who Bobby Fish gets put in the ring with and what storyline goes.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot you can do with Bobby Fish, and like you said, he just needs to find that spot where they have a lot to do with him.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We didn't. We'll absolutely we'll get to looking at intimidation games, and MLW is a focus of ours going forward. Jeremy has an outage in his area, he reports.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and isn't here to do championship wrestling with Jeremy. I will run down a few bits we're going a bit long tonight, and having a great time. I'm having a great time. So, look, the United Wrestling Network has been on a hiatus for a few months now, and we've been kind of keeping the flame alive on this show. Mr. David Marquez, all of us agree, produces some of the finest wrestling products available on TV anywhere. And when some of us have got a little worried that what's up with the UWN, they just only grew. There is an upcoming taping coming February 25th for Championship Wrestling. That's out in California. You've got Derby City returning. They have a new TV deal, Derby City in Lexington, that the UWN announced, I believe, just yesterday. They have signed up Ironheart Pro Wrestling out of Minnesota, which we'll have some information next week on that. And obviously they have the ongoing relationship in the UWN with Memphis, which is on every week. My daughter's favorite wrestling out of the UWN comes out of Memphis. And I mention all these things in sort of I guess I'm regurgitating a bit, but next week we'll have the head booker of the United Wrestling Network's Championship Wrestling, Daniel R. Hill, on this show, and we're going to ask him all kinds of questions that, and we'll invite all of you to as well about what's going on with the UWN, where's the direction that it's headed. What can we expect in the coming year? Some of the great matches that we can expect to see out of this February 25th, taping. And I'm super excited to talk with Daniel about it. Jack Banning, by the way, celebrating yesterday or today 1 year.
Yep.
As UWN World Television Champion. So congratulations to Jack. Fun personality, great talent. Apparently, we have the bounty hunter Brian Keith in the chat right now. Either way, welcome, welcome. And if it's you, as apparently it is, congratulations on your new contract with AEW. There you go. So we'll skip it over for the UWM this week, but we'll be primed and ready for Jeremy's return and Daniel Hill's involvement next week as well. Let's wrap it up with a segment. Back to MLW again. We like to call "I Respect You, Booker Man." I just want to say this right before we go into it, Dave, because James H. Jackson deserves all my time and energy. UWN from day one has always been my top promotion. For some people are Heyman guys. I'm a Dave Marquez guy through and through. Amen. There you go. Dave, however, I made a thing for this. Dave, what's the future hold after MLW for the Samoan Werewolf?
Well, I actually asked him where he's going, and he said just be on the lookout that the next couple months he's going to be making appearances here, there, and everywhere, and he's going to choose where he goes. And I'm like, okay, so basically you're not telling me. And he's like, well, he goes, you'll know when I arrive somewhere because noise will be made. And I'm like, okay. His new shirt is Samoan wear. It's Fatu, just his name, Fatu, with his face on it. And it's one of these things of he's amazing at what he does. He is cousins to the Usos.
Yep.
Cousins to basically almost all of the Samoans that have been involved with wrestling. He's the son of a Tonga Kid, Samu, from back in the day of WWF. I would use him, if possible, in the Bloodline storyline. But it's one of these things that he's had problems in the past. But this was back when he was 18. He was arrested.
Right.
He straightened his life out. He has a family to provide for. There's a reason he is leaving, and he's still on good terms with MLW. So he said he would be able to come back if things work out. So there are several wrestlers that aren't doing WWE that are elsewhere that come here and there. So it's one of those things of I'd like to see him be in the Bloodline storyline, just because to me, I watch it a little here and there, but it seems to be slowing down. So they need some quote unquote new blood. So either bring him in to the WWE or bring him in to a storyline in NXT with Ava, who is The Rock's daughter.
Right.
So it's one of those things, use him to your advantage. He can wrestle or just be a bodyguard for Ava at this point. But if you follow TNA, Hammerstone is there. I don't know if he's signed long term, but Fatu and Hammerstone have a long history from MLW.
Right.
So he can go just about anywhere. He could go to AEW, but in my opinion, it would be a waste for him to go just because they have so many people. If they would bring him in and actually do something with ROH, completely separate from AEW, and have an hour, 2-hour show, that'd be one of those things that it'd be great. But in my eyes, if he's not going WWE, I'd try to bring him in to TNA, just because there's a story to be told there of his history with Hammerstone that I know of. I do watch TNA, but they're not pushing any Samoan wrestlers at this time. That's
a mistake, by the way.
that they need to, no matter what people say, oh, you're trying to leech off of what WWE is doing. Yeah, everybody does that.
Yeah, for sure. That's just good booking.
I mean, that's just, if it's hot here, let's try to get a little spike in our viewership and bring in somebody who is part of that group, but not of that group on TV. So it's one of those things. I would go with TNA. But with what he does and all these different wrestling organizations, he's doing Pacific Coast Wrestling. Okay, he can go out to California. He can do Game Changer Wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
His style fits in anywhere and everywhere. But if you're going for top 5 wrestling organizations, if they don't bring him into WWE for the Bloodline, I'd go with TNA myself.
You figure that's the right fit?
Yeah.
It makes sense to me.
I mean, there's an instant story already with Hammerstone. Plus, you can either bring in some other wrestlers. You can bring in maybe Lance. I know Lance is doing some work with New Japan, but he was also part of the Samoan SWAT team back in MLW.
Right.
So who knows? There's all these different wrestlers. Use them to your advantage.
100%. Well, I got that picture up, by the way. Where is that picture? I managed to upload it. Here's right down in the bottom left. There's Fatu telling Dave exactly where he's going, but making him swear to secrecy.
Yep.
So he can't actually tell us exactly where it is, but it's probably one of those places Dave mentions. Hey, listen, I think that's it. I think that's it for us.
Okay.
Here we go. Oh, James, I agree. Don't go to AEW. ROH, he would be used once and stuck in catering with Miro and others, sadly. He's not wrong, right? James H. Jackson isn't wrong, man. Don't go there.
Well, I mean, if I know Tony Khan bought ROH and he's doing his part, but they have mass tapings and have 10, 12, 13 matches taped, and it's cool if you want to watch that, but it's behind a pay window. Yeah. It's $9.99 a month to watch. Okay, $250 a week. Okay, cool, but you could be doing so much more. Bring someone else in. Hey, Tony, bring in Scott D'Amore. Let him run ROH. And if there's all these sports groups getting together to do sports programming and streaming, figure out a way to make it work.
You know what? I meant to say this earlier when we were talking about MLW, but like ROH doesn't work for me. And I was a big ROH fan back in the Sinclair days. And, you know, I used to mark out completely, totally, and utterly for the pure wrestling title.
Yep.
It was exactly what I thought everything should be. It doesn't exist to me right now. Like ROH. It's not a thing that is even remotely on my radar. Like, you and I don't watch WWE or AEW too much. If it's in the background, there it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our interests kind of lie elsewhere. But, ROH doesn't even show up on my radar. And I think it's cool when you have, an ROH world champion who I think is, what's his name, Dave? Former NWA guy.
Oh, Kingston.
Eddie Kingston. Thank you. I think that's cool. But if it's not accessible, and I didn't mean this to be a shot at anybody, but if it's not accessible to you, to the common fan, then it doesn't exist to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you'd want to go there.
Well, I mean, right now, ROH is ROH in name only.
Right.
If they were to be either put off to the side and made into a training organization where you get your reps in, I can understand that. But you have all the history of ROH. And now with everything at your fingertips, all you have to do is Google ROH and you see all these different wrestlers. What would WWE be without ROH? Think of all the ROH wrestlers that are now in AEW that, even in TNA Impact, there's wrestlers that have been here, there, and everywhere. Make it mean something.
Right. James H. Jackson Jr., ROH equals a new AEW Dark. It's whoever is sitting around, put them in a random match. I canceled my Honor Club subscription 3 months ago after 18 years, as most of the top matches take place on AEW TV. If I'm paying $9.99 a month, I should see all the title matches, and I should not have to watch AEW to see them.
Yep.
Yeah, just it's so poorly set up right now, and I don't think I'm adding anything new to the public Discord when I say that's what happens when you have one guy running too many projects at the same time.
Yep.
On that note, where can they find you on social media, my friend?
You can find me on Twitter X and Instagram at Dave Scooby, and on TikTok at Dave Scooby, followed by the number 1.
I am at Alliance, the Alliance Gold. I am paused against my will on social media right now. And I think I actually just sort of figured out today why. I was telling my wife, I was obviously very upset about the NWA not being available to international viewers like me. But beyond all that, what really kind of, I didn't realize it before. I don't know why it's so obvious that Alliance Gold was built around NWA belt bios. There's 75 of them, in various places on the different sites that I run. 75 NWA belts have biographies. I think it's 75.
Wow.
And it felt like they took my identity away.
Yeah.
and I know that's overstating it. It's just pro wrestling. Calm down and relax, Tim. But I'm there. You can find me at the Alliance Gold. You can hit me up on DMs. We'll chat and everything. I just don't know what to do right now. I feel like I'm more about this than I am about that. And that's okay with me because I have fun here. Alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information, not only for the National Wrestling Alliance, but the United Wrestling Network, Major League Wrestling, various independents around the world. You can, there's lots of Alliance members. The Discord, this is a terrible, you can't copy and paste this, but down in the doobly-doo is the Discord. Pollo Del Mar just joined, right? A bunch of guys just ended up joining that we've known for a long time, and it is raucous in there. So enjoy. I looked at it just a couple minutes ago, and it was like there are 45 new messages from 7 p.m. I'm like, oh my God. You know, like, so it's a great place to be. It's where we all chat. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, the Alliance guys with J. Cal, with Daisy Kill Mercer. I feel like I'm misrepresenting both he and Daisy Kill with DKM. It's not Daisy Kill. It's DKM. Devin Mercer and Jaden, the giant Jaden. I mean, if it's DK, it's the giant. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they talk NWA. They talk pro wrestling. They've been doing it 15 years. It's a great watch. That's the A-list show. And every Tuesday at 5 p.m., it's the Vanguard show for the Alliance. It's the pre-party, the hour before Power, or as Jay figures it out, maybe the hour after Power. We'll see it. Maybe it's the after party. I think we did that recently, and it's a hell of a time. And I appreciate all you guys being there. None less than my good friend. I can't wait to drink a bottle of whiskey with them once the NWA returns to us international fans, and we get together at an event down the road. James H. Jackson, maybe here gets a last word. To me, Alliance Blog is a family. No matter what wrestling we talk about and watch, we're always a family. I take the shirt off my back for anyone in here. Fantastic. You're the man. That's it. That's it, and that's all. Dave, it's always good to talk to you. And until next time, everybody, we will see you at the match.
Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.